I think when we look at this historical background as well as current developments, we can say that now we are enjoying the best time of our diplomatic relations. Both countries have decided to elevate that relationship to a more strategic level in recent years. Indonesia can play a major role for Turkey to be a gate to Southeast Asia, where we are talking about like 700 million consumers. On the other hand, Turkey can be a gate for Indonesia to Europe, where we are talking about like 700 million people again with a very strong purchasing power. I think this is how we can maybe mitigate the influences of all other global powers.
Pemirsa, Indonesia dan Turki telah menikmati hubungan dengan kemitraan strategis sejak tahun 1950. Dan kedekatan tidak hanya ada di level diplomatik, tapi juga di level tertinggi kedua negara. Selamat datang kembali di International Corner Antara bersama saya Arya Sindiara, dan hari ini kita akan berbincang tentang hubungan Indonesia dan Turki dengan Duta Besar Turki untuk Indonesia, His Excellency Talip Kucukcan. Mr. Ambassador, welcome to International Corner.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, and I'd like to jump right into the 75th anniversary of the relationship between our two countries. I wonder, what's your take on the bilateral relationship so far, and how do you view this going forward?
Well, this year we are celebrating 75th anniversary of the beginning of our diplomatic relations. I think this is something that we would like to cherish. But when we look at the relations between Turkey and Indonesia, bilateral relations, although we are celebrating the 75th anniversary, the relations between the Turks and the Indonesians actually have a history of 500 years. When there were sultanates in this land, in this beautiful land, the Ottomans and the sultanates established some sort of relations. Although there are quite a big geographical distances between Turkey and Indonesia, when there was a sultanate in Indonesia, especially from Aceh, we know that some commissions, some committees and delegations were sent to the Ottoman Empire, to Istanbul, to ask for assistance actually, because Aceh was surrounded by the Portuguese powers, and they asked for help. And when we look at the historical memory between Turks and, I think, Indonesians, we see that this is still there. When I came to Indonesia to begin my post, I think I have really witnessed this, because we were welcomed by the Indonesians. Many people refer to this historical reality. But of course now we live in a nation-state period, and of course Turkey was one of the first countries to recognize the independence of Indonesia, and we are one of the first countries to appoint an ambassador here to Jakarta actually. I think when we look at this historical background as well as current developments, we can say that now we are enjoying the best time of our diplomatic relations. Both countries have decided to elevate that relationship to a more strategic level in recent years. In 2022, during the G20 summit in Bali, Mr. President Erdogan visited Indonesia, and our relations became much more stronger. So now we have established something called, that's a new mechanism between our countries actually. It is called High-Level Strategic Cooperation Council. That means now the ministers will come together under the leadership of the presidents. The first meeting of that council took place in Bogor in February this year actually. I think this was also one of the peak moment of our relationship. Right after that, Mr. Prabowo went to Turkey to visit Mr. President Erdogan, and also he was one of the actually rare leaders who addressed the Turkish parliament, which is also a unique opportunity, unique, I think, case that would illustrate how close our relationship is. Plus, Mr. Prabowo went to Antalya Diplomacy Forum, where many leaders from all around the world come together. I think when we look at all these variables, I would say, I would argue that our diplomatic relations are really the best time of our history. But that is also supported by many other, I think, developments in trade, culture, technology, and defense.
Right. It's interesting that you mentioned that, Mr. Ambassador, because under the current administration that's being led by our President Prabowo Subianto, I wonder if there are any areas that you as an ambassador see should be prioritized in our cooperation with Turkey, and perhaps especially related to Mr. Prabowo's Astachita visions.
Well, actually, when Mr. Prabowo was on the streets to just before the elections, we have been following his promises to the people of Indonesia very closely in many areas, in defense industry, in food self-sufficiency, food security, and also providing thousands and millions of people here for a better education, and also as far as distributing healthy food, nutritious food to people, plus of course building new houses to millions of people. I think these were very important areas, and Turkey also went through similar, I think, processes. Both leaders, when they came together, actually, they discussed all these areas for cooperation. That's why one of our priorities was always to increase the interaction between Turkey and Indonesia. As I said in the beginning, because of the geographical distance, both countries had their own focus within the region. In Southeast Asia, Indonesia emerged as one of the biggest powers and also a very influential country. Turkey emerged in the Middle East and in just nearby Europe as an influential actor. So we wanted to bring our forces together. So when we look at from that perspective, for example, our priority was here, first of all, to support and strengthen our strategic relationships. How we can do this? Of course, we have to invest in trade more and more. We should invest in more bilateral, I think, engagements. That is what's happening actually, because when these bilateral visits took place in 2025, two leaders came together twice. This is quite an unusual, quite an exceptional. These were state visits. Our presidents also meet in other avenues, actually, in UN, in OIC, but these are summit meetings, usually more shorter, maybe not more detailed. But in these two meetings, we had more than 18 agreements together. So this is also something very, I think, unique in our history, especially in recent history. That's why we wanted to concentrate on several areas, including, of course, defense, which is one of the, I think, top priorities between our countries because of our strategic relations, as I said, and the multiple, I think, challenges that we face today. We see that these two big nations can bring their forces together to make this world much, I think, better.
Mr. Ambassador, you mentioned that we have 18 MOUs that has been signed by our two countries during the two visits. I wonder how is the progress of those MOUs now, which covers a wide range of sectors, including energy, health, agriculture. Can you just give us an update on the implementation?
Of course, MOUs are important, but MOUs should not remain on the table. Otherwise, they will be nice documents. What we want to see implementation of all these documents in practice. For example, when we look at the education cooperation in that area, I think there's a lot of progress going on, because what we have done actually, after the agreement signed, as an ambassador, I met almost all the ministers who were relevant in those meetings. They were present. And also we started establishing committees on both sides. For example, now Minister of Technology and Higher Education here, and also Minister of Higher Education, we call it Council of Higher Education actually. They have established some subcommittees in order to follow up all these issues. I think this is a very good example of how we can further our relations. And also, we have some agreements on the defense side. One of the purpose of this agreement was actually technology transfer. And now, at the moment, some of our companies are coming together. We are training Indonesian engineers in Turkey. And now, this is also something that we took a little bit forward. As I said, MOUs and agreements are very nice, but they are only the grounds to go further. Now we started to go further in our relations.
Okay. Just lastly, very briefly, Mr. Ambassador, in this moment of 75 years anniversary of our relationship, is there any program that you would like to start during your tenure here, or maybe you'd like to strengthen?
Well, one of the first areas that we wanted to strengthen is actually to increase the trade volume between our countries. At the moment, it is about $3 billion. When we look at the size of our economies, we believe that I think our trade volume should be much higher. Both leaders set a target, which is $10 billion per year. Now, actually, we are working for this. One of the reasons why we don't have that trade volume, as I said, because of the concentration of our countries. But at the moment now, we are engaging in free trade agreement, which is going to open new ways of increasing our trade volume.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador. We'll be back for our second and third segment, and we'll see you right back. Thank you. Baik pemirsa, demikian perbincangan saya dalam segmen pertama dengan Duta Besar Turki untuk Indonesia, His Excellency Talip Kucukcan. Jangan lupa untuk kembali menyaksikan segmen kedua, International Corner Antara.
A program that brings the world to your screen through insightful dialogues, exploring various issues with international figures. How do you view this?
It gives more visibility to Indonesia in France.
Revealing various facts regarding bilateral, regional, and multilateral cooperation in numerous sectors. Welcome back, Mr. Ambassador, to our second segment.
I'm Grazia Simanjuntak, the producer and host.
And I'm your host, Arya Sejarah. Join us on International Corner.
Obrolan seputar isu paling hangat jangan dengar dari sembarang sumber.
Di sini, podcast yang mengundang narasumber pakar dan ahli terpercaya.
Podcast antara on the record, podcast antara close up.
Simak ya, hanya di
antaranews.com/video
dan YouTube Antara TV Indonesia.
Di tengah ancaman kesehatan global dan penyakit menular yang terus mengintai manusia.
Salam bisa, salam bisa, salam bisa, salam bisa, bincang sehat.
Bincang sehat bisa.
Perbedaan dari pusing sama sakit kepala ini seperti apa sih, Dok?
Jadi kira kalau untuk sakit kepala dengan pusing itu yang perlu kita bedakan adalah sensasinya.
Hadir menjawab berbagai upaya pencegahan dan pengobatan yang tepat dengan menghadirkan para narasumber terpercaya untuk membahas berbagai persoalan kesehatan yang ada. Simak dan saksikan selalu Bincang Sehat hanya di Antara.
Halo pemirsa, selamat datang kembali di International Corner Antara bersama saya Arya Sindiara. Hari ini masih bergabung bersama saya Duta Besar Turki untuk Indonesia, His Excellency Talip Kucukcan. Mr. Ambassador, welcome back to our second segment.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
In our first segment, we talked a little bit about how our both countries want to strengthen our trade relationship. But at the moment, there are trade challenges with tariff policies, maybe that is also being implemented under U.S. President Donald Trump, which likely to impact global trade dynamics as well. In your opinion, what can countries like Turkey and Indonesia do to mitigate the effects of these tensions?
Well, I think that's a very important question because we are now in a very volatile, let's say, period when we talk about trade relations in many parts of the world. When we look at Indonesia and Turkey as emerging powers, I would say as middle powers, I think this is quite an important issue. And I believe that there are some global players in the field of trade, but middle powers like Indonesia, Turkey and all other MIKTA countries, because Turkey is part of that, Indonesia and Turkey are part of the MIKTA group. I believe that we can see new agency in international relations, in trade relations, and Turkey and Indonesia are the right, I think, countries where they can cooperate, they can collaborate, because when we look at the geographical and geopolitical position of our countries and the places, I think Indonesia can play a major role for Turkey to be a gate to Southeast Asia, where we are talking about like 700 million consumers. On the other hand, Turkey can be a gate for Indonesia to Europe, where we are talking about like 700 million people again with a very strong purchasing power. I think this is how we can maybe mitigate the influences of all other global powers, because at the moment, as we see, multilateralism is unfortunately being eroded. And now some countries would like to become more dominant, more hegemonic in all areas. I think the countries like Indonesia and Turkey can counter all these sort of efforts with the support of other countries. As I said, Turkey is part of MIKTA, and also Turkey is working with OIC countries, and also in the UN we are together. I think all these platforms would bring Turkey and Indonesia as emerging leaders in the future.
All right, Mr. Ambassador, I think when we talk about regional issues, it's impossible to not talk about the disasters that we've been seeing happening in Southeast Asia, including in Indonesia, in some parts of Sumatra and Aceh. Turkey is currently implementing a holistic approach to address climate change through the adaptation strategy that also focus on agriculture, forestry, disaster risk management as well. Can you explain how these efforts are being implemented and how it has yielded results?
Well, as you said, we face many challenges in terms of climate change and natural disasters. And of course, we are very sorry that in Sumatra, this week we have seen a huge disaster and many people lost their lives. We feel the pain of people of Indonesia. From the day first, actually, on this issue, I've been in contact with my government to mobilize our resources to provide some assistance to people in those affected areas. As for Turkey is concerned, we have also seen many disasters in Turkey, especially earthquakes. Just a couple of years ago, we lost almost 50,000 people in the south part of Turkey. This is something that we need to really address, because you never know when this disaster might happen and might strike you. And of course, we would like to thank people of Indonesia, because they were with us when there was this earthquake. We had great help from your country. We are very thankful to the leadership of Indonesia and people of Indonesia. And I think this is, as I said, the challenge of today. Now we are living in a risk society, especially those risks are sometimes man-made risks, unfortunately. That's why, and also we need to cooperate, because it is not only one country that is influenced by disasters. That's why Turkey has established very strong institutions to address such issues. And I think all these institutions now are in touch with the Indonesian authorities and with the ASEAN authorities, actually, so that we can learn from each other, we can support each other.
Like one of the MOUs that was being signed during the visits of our two presidents was between our disaster management agencies. What kind of on-field cooperation that we can see from this?
Well, actually, now our disaster management agencies are in touch with each other to respond to the crisis that we can see both in Turkey and also in Indonesia. But our cooperation will go beyond these two countries as well. Because as we said, like in COVID-19, we have seen that all the natural disasters need to be responded by the global, I think, cooperation, not only by two countries. But at the moment, we are engaged with each other in terms of training, in terms of providing help, in terms of creating new mechanisms of cooperation between Turkey and Indonesia.
All right, sir, I'd like to pivot a little to the issue of peace in Palestine and Ukraine, which Turkey have always been at the forefront of these efforts, and Indonesia also wants to play a bigger role in achieving peace in these two areas. How will Turkey continue these efforts until two-state solution is truly implemented in Palestine and a peaceful settlement between Ukraine and Russia is achieved?
Well, actually, between Turkey and Indonesia, there is I think, a very close contact as far as the Palestinian issue is concerned and the peace efforts that we now follow today. I think for Turkey and Indonesia, the Palestinian issue is almost a national issue. I mean, across all, cultural divide, across all political divide. I think this is something that we unite around the Palestinian cause, because the Israeli aggression, actually, and the settlement all around Palestine is a clear violation of the UN Charter and all the human rights issues. And also the attack on Gaza is something that from the day first, Turkey and Indonesia cooperated with each other to find a solution. On the Ukrainian case, on the Ukrainian-Russian war, Turkey, right from the start, is one of the rare countries that can talk to both sides actually, and especially the grain deal that Turkey facilitated between Ukraine and Russia is something that is important for the food security, because there was a shortage of food in Africa and elsewhere, and now the grain produced in Russia and in Ukraine can go all these countries. And also Turkey actually has hosted both sides in Istanbul 3 times, which is also unique, because I think peace efforts are very valuable, and I think Indonesia is one of the countries that also has done so, and also the commitment of Indonesia in Palestine, especially in Gaza, on the ground, is something that Turkey and Indonesia can cooperate with. I think when we look at Turkey's position as far as the wars and conflict, both in the region and elsewhere are concerned, we have been always a mediating country, because we do not want to take strong positions against any country, because especially in the Middle East, for example, we are in the midst of all these conflicts and crises. We need to find a very positive, I think, solutions and approach. And on the immigration and refugee issues as well, I think there is another challenge that we face in our region. Currently, we have got almost 3 million refugees from Syria, and Turkey is trying to find a peaceful ways of sending them back to their own countries when there is an effort. Turkey has also plays a major role in Syria to find some sort of stability and transition to a more representative government. I think these are all issues that we need each other, Turkey and Indonesia, to be on the safe side.
It definitely takes an effort together, and it can be done through bilateral and multilateral platforms as well. Right, Mr. Ambassador, I have another question about global uncertainties, but I'm going to keep that for our last segment, where we'll talk more about our cooperation and considering global uncertainties as well. Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you.
Baik pemirsa, demikian perbincangan saya dengan Duta Besar Turki untuk Indonesia, His Excellency Talip Kucukcan. Jangan lupa untuk menyaksikan segmen terakhir kami di International Corner.
A program that brings the world to your screen through insightful dialogues, exploring various issues with international figures. How do you view this?
It gives more visibility to Indonesia in France.
Revealing various facts regarding bilateral, regional, and multilateral cooperation in numerous sectors. Welcome back, Mr. Ambassador, to our second segment.
I'm Grazia Simanjuntak, the producer and host.
And I'm your host, Arya Sindiara. Join us on International Corner.
Halo pecinta sepak bola Indonesia. Tahu nggak, di 1952 ada Toni Pogasnik, warga negara Yugoslavia yang harus lewati lobi politik dulu untuk latih timnas Indonesia. Nah, itu baru satu fakta. Masih banyak lagi hal seru dan fakta menarik tentang sejarah dan sosok-sosok penting sepak bola di tanah air. Saksikan hanya di Sport Antara.
Menyajikan fakta yang belum pernah terungkap. Nusantara Beat adalah grup musik berbasis di Amsterdam dengan akar budaya Indonesia yang kuat.
Mengulas segala hal yang berkaitan dengan musik secara mendalam dan informatif. Kedekatan Kurt Cobain dengan The Fazlins tak hanya sampai di situ. Nama depan putih Kurt diambil dari nama personil The Fazlins, Francis McKay.
Ngobrol santai dan menyaksikan penampilan apik musisi favorit.
Saksikan hanya di Antara TV.
Halo pemirsa, selamat datang kembali di International Corner Antara bersama saya Arya Sindiara. Pada hari ini masih bergabung bersama saya Duta Besar Turki untuk Indonesia, His Excellency Talip Kucukcan. Mr. Ambassador, this is our last segment, and I'd like to go straight in to the issues of global uncertainties that we're all facing right now. I wonder what new measures or frameworks are being explored to strengthen direct Turkey and Indonesia collaboration in terms of crisis response, cybersecurity, and supply chain resilience.
Even as I said earlier, we go through difficult times in the world. I mean, when we look at the uncertainties and the challenges that we face, that requires several countries to come together. That is a must for countries. I think when we look at the upcoming challenges in the world, Turkey and Indonesia are there to help each other to, already we have got a very strong ground and background to further our relationship. One area, for example, that we have been talking with Indonesia and with other partners is reforming the current international system, which is the legacy of the Second World War. Because when we look at the crises all around the world, some of the institutions are supposed to respond to all these issues, like UN, the World Bank, IMF, World Health Organization, FAO, this is a food organization. But the reality is that those organizations, those institutions are not anymore effective because these are not representative organizations any longer. When we look at the size of Indonesia, for example, 300 million people and the biggest country in the Southeast Asia, part of G20, but when we look at how it is represented in the UN, it is something that is now under question. Similarly, when we look at Africa, where there are many crises in terms of food, insecurity, conflicts, disasters, etc. So who will respond? Which institutions will take measures? Of course, everybody looks at UN, but the UN Security Council is controlled by a very small number of countries where there is no representation from Africa, where is no representation from the global south, I would say. That's why when we look at all these, I think, big picture, we need to first come together to push more reforms in those organizations to become much more fair, to become much more representative, and to be more just, I would say. That's why our president, His Excellency Erdogan, has proposed this to many leaders during the UN conferences, saying the world is bigger than 5. That means the UN Security Council should be reformed. I think the latest example is the Gaza crisis. Almost 60,000 people lost their lives. Israel has continued its attack on a daily basis, and thousands of children were killed as well. And the UN Security Council couldn't come up with a strong resolution simply because some of the countries were not happy with the decision, or they would veto such issue. I think this is also related with the IMF, the World Bank, and all other international organizations, because now multipolarity is something under, as I said, question, but we need to strengthen it because of the hegemony of some world countries. I think we cannot allow that everything will be hijacked by those forces. That's why I think Turkey and Indonesia can play a very positive and constructive role in reforming international organizations, global organizations, plus to address several questions by also aligning with similar-minded countries. And now in the Middle East, in Africa, in Southeast Asia, in many places we have got like-minded countries today facing similar challenges but also reacting in the same way.
Sir, I'd like to jump into our cultural and social sector. Indonesia and Turkey have agreed to expand exchanges in arts, traditions, and cultural values, which both our countries are really rich in. Can you explain how this agreement will be implemented and enhanced in the future?
I think we would like to emphasize the fact that the culture unites people. Already we have got very good relations. We believe that cultural, I think, aspect of that relationship should be also strengthened. One way of doing is, for example, is to producing films. At the moment we are in talk with the Minister of Culture here in Indonesia. Already our ministers actually came together to produce a film that could represent culture from both countries. That means millions of people will watch it in Turkey and millions will watch it in Indonesia. So that will create a good momentum. And also we have a growing number of Indonesian students in Turkey. They are also well versed with the Turkish culture. And also we are now, we have established a cultural center in Indonesia, in Jakarta. It is Yunus Emre Institute. The purpose of that institute is to promote culture on both sides actually. We would like to teach Turkish music, culture, art to people of Indonesia and the vice versa. And that also, I think, is an important cultural bridge between our countries. And also we would like to see more students from your country, because there are some government scholarships provided by our government. Now we would like to increase all these scholarship programs so that we can have more cultural contact, because people-to-people contact is maybe much more powerful than the conventional diplomacy, I would say. It's much more softer, it's much more resilient as well.
Sir, it's interesting that you mentioned education because it's one of the most sought after things between Indonesian youth is about education and scholarship. Can you just explain a little bit about the availability of scholarship programs from the Turkish government, and perhaps if there are any certain sectors in education, like in creative arts, or what sectors are you looking for?
Well, first, as I said, at the moment in Turkey, there are 5,500 Indonesian students. Some of them are in state universities, some of them are in private universities. There is a huge advantage of studying in Turkey because, as I said, Turkey bridges Europe and Asia, East and West. And Indonesian students who can study in Turkey, they can actually go and study in Europe for a period of time as well, because Turkish universities are all part of the Erasmus exchange programs, very much aligned with the European universities and European university curriculums. That's why we encourage more Indonesian students to come to Turkey. Indonesia is very lucky because 50% of your population is under 30. But that requires, I think, good education and training opportunities. As I said, Turkey, as being part of European Union, as being part of Asia and Middle East, is a very good location where we can have specialized education for you. In recent, actually, months, we are discussing with the Indonesian government and scholarship programs, especially on medicine, on some of the engineering issues. We would like to see more students coming to Turkey on Turkish scholarship, supported by the Indonesian government, because these are some areas I think we can cooperate. All other areas like social sciences, political science, engineering, and medicine, these are also very much open, because Turkish universities are, as I said, recognized by all other countries, and also, I mean, it is a place where you can see the mixture of cultures. It is like Indonesia. Indonesia has a diversity of culture. It's a multicultural place. I think Indonesian students, when they go to Turkey, they will feel that they are at home as well.
Sir, lastly, just very briefly, I want to talk a little bit about tourism cooperation as well. Can you tell us 3 areas in Turkey where you would recommend Indonesians going? I know that Turkey is already quite popular among Indonesian tourists, but just your personal picks.
Recommending places in Turkey?
In Turkey, yes.
Well, Turkey is a beautiful country. I would like to recommend many people in Indonesia to see. Of course, Istanbul is the capital of Turkish culture, Turkish, I think, civilization, and Ottoman civilization as well. And also, I would like to emphasize the fact that it is not only Istanbul. Istanbul is a big place, is a big country, is a city. I would like to also see some people going to Bursa, which is a very nice city. Bursa is a city where the Ottoman Empire was actually established. Now you can see a lot of historical sites there as well. And also I would like to recommend my own city, Adana, in the south part of Turkey, if you are interested in culinary culture, because kebab originated from my city actually. So I would like to see more Indonesians coming to my city. We will be very pleased to host them there.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador. Very good insight, because now I know the new destinations to go in Turkey. Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador.
It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Baik pemirsa, demikian perbincangan saya dengan Duta Besar Turki untuk Indonesia, His Excellency Talip Kucukcan. Terima kasih telah menyaksikan International Corner Antara bersama saya, Arya Sindiara, dan sampai jumpa di International Corner berikutnya.